Welcome to the art class.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1892. A young man is taking a walk along a cliffside path in Oslo.
Right at sunset.
Yeah, exactly, at sunset. And he looks down at the valley below, and he sees the grim industrial shapes of a slaughterhouse. And it is sitting literally right next to an insane asylum.
It's just a bleak visual.
Totally. And then he looks up, and the sky suddenly turns this crazy color of coagulated blood. He just freezes, trembling, overwhelmed by a sound that only he seems to hear.
Wow.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking this incredible stack of research, historical diaries, scientific studies, basically to completely change how you see the most famous yet profoundly misunderstood image in the world.
Edvard Munch's masterpiece, The Scream.
Exactly. The Scream. And it's just, it is genuinely incredible how invisible this painting has become to us.
Oh, absolutely. Because of its sheer ubiquity, we've basically stopped actually looking at it. We just recognize the shape and immediately move on.
Right. Think about your relationship with like a ridiculously catchy pop song. You know the phenomenon, right?
Oh, yeah, where everyone knows the chorus.
Yeah, everyone knows the chorus. You hear it playing softly over the speakers at the grocery store. You hum it in the car.
Right.
The Scream is basically the visual equivalent of that pop song. You see it printed on cheap coffee mugs. It's molded into plastic Halloween masks.
People use it as a reaction meme on the internet all the time.
Exactly. But nobody actually stops to listen to the incredibly dark lyrics. We just endlessly consume the catchy chorus and ignore all the substance.
And what is so compelling about the sources we are looking at today is that the lyrics of this painting, they are not fiction.
Which is wild to me.
Right, because the common assumption has always been that the Scream is just this wild burst of pure imagination, like an abstract manifestation of angst.
Just a guy having a bad day in his head.
Exactly. But the reality is that this painting is essentially a documentary. It is a hyper-specific capture of a terrifying real-world moment that happened to a real person on that hillside.
So to understand what happened on that hill, we have to start with the man climbing it, right?
Yeah, we do.
We have to move away from the famous image on the canvas and look at the incredibly heavy psychological baggage Edvard Munch was physically carrying with him that day.
And that baggage was staggering. His early life was defined by an almost unimaginable level of loss and illness.
Tell me about it.
So he was born in Norway in 1863. And he lost his mother to consumption, what we now call tuberculosis, when he was only 5 years old.
5 years old?
Oh.
At 5, you don't even have the cognitive tools to process grief.
No, not at all.
You just experience the sudden, terrifying absence of your primary caregiver. And tuberculosis isn't a peaceful way to go either.
No, it's horrible.
It is a brutal, lingering disease that literally consumes the lungs. Watching that happen up close, that would leave a permanent scar.
Exactly. Well, and the trauma didn't stop there. 10 years later, his beloved older sister, Sophie, the person he was arguably closest to in the entire world, she contracted the very same disease. Yeah, she died at the age of 15.
Devastating. And looking through the historical biographies we have here, his father did not exactly provide a stabilizing environment in the wake of all this death.
Far from it. No. His father's reaction to this profound grief was to retreat into a really dark, obsessive, and highly punitive form of religion.
Like fire and brimstone stuff.
Very much so. The household was constantly filled with lectures on sin, death, and eternal damnation. It was an incredibly oppressive environment.
Yeah.
Munch actually later wrote that his father essentially handed him the seeds of madness.
He explicitly blamed his father for planting that psychological time bomb.
He did, yeah. And the hits just kept coming. Another of his sisters, Nora, developed severe mental illness and had to be institutionalized.
It just doesn't end.
It really doesn't. Later on, his brother died suddenly at the age of 30, so Munch was just suffocating under the constant presence of mortality.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's this chilling quote from him in his diaries. He wrote, and I quote, "Illness, insanity, and death were the black angels that kept watch over my cradle and accompanied me all my life."
Black angels that kept watch over my cradle. That is hauntingly poetic.
It really is.
So by the time he is a young man in his 20s, he is basically just waiting for the other shoe to drop. He fully expects to either die of tuberculosis or lose his mind.
Yeah, he was terrified he had inherited this dual curse of consumption and insanity.
Right.
Which brings us back to January 22nd, 1892. Munch is taking that walk on Ekeberg Hill in Oslo with two friends. The sun is setting.
Okay.
He later writes a diary entry about this walk that becomes the literal blueprint for the painting. He describes the sky suddenly turning blood red. His friends keep walking, but he stops paralyzed by anxiety.
It's just frozen.
Frozen. He writes that he stood there trembling and he sensed an, quote, infinite scream passing through nature.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Yeah.
Because I am looking at this staggering family history. The institutionalized sister, the tuberculosis, the religious trauma.
Right. All of it.
Given all of that, wasn't Munch simply having a severe internal panic attack? Like a complete psychological break on that hill?
That's a very fair question.
Right. Because why should we believe he was reacting to anything real in the environment rather than just, his own internal demons finally catching up with him?
Well, for decades, art historians drew that exact conclusion. They totally assumed the painting was purely a projection of an internal psychological collapse.
Good.
But modern science actually corroborates Munch's physical experience. The terror wasn't just in his head. The sky was quite literally putting on a horrifying display.
Wait, meteorologists actually studied the sky in a 19th century painting.
They did. Astrophysicists and meteorologists have engaged in this massive debate over the swirling, violent sky in the scream.
That's amazing.
There are two leading scientific theories explaining the mechanics of what Munch actually saw. Theory number one traces the sky back to the 1883 volcanic eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia.
Hold on. Krakatoa erupted in 1883. Munch's walk on the hill was in 1892.
Right.
That is a 9-year gap. You're telling me a sunset he saw nearly a decade earlier triggered a panic attack in 1892? That feels like a massive stretch.
It sounds like it, right? But consider the sheer scale of Krakatoa. It was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded human history.
Okay, true.
It injected millions of tons of ash and sulfur dioxide aerosols directly into the stratosphere. Those particles literally wrapped around the globe, blocking sunlight and altering the global climate.
Wow.
But more importantly, they scattered long-wave red light at sunset in a highly specific way. For years after the eruption, people all over Europe reported seeing these incredibly vivid, violently blood-red skies.
So it wasn't just a one-off sunset?
No, it lasted for years. And scholars argue that those apocalyptic skies were burned deeply into a young Munch's visual memory. When his anxiety peaked on that hill years later, his mind basically projected that stored traumatic visual data onto the current sunset.
So it's like a form of delayed visual trauma.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating mechanism.
Isn't it?
But you mentioned two theories. What's the alternative?
So the second theory is more localized to the exact time of his walk. And it involves the physics of nacreous clouds.
Nacreous clouds, what are those?
They are also known as mother-of-pearl clouds. They are exceptionally rare because they only form in the lower stratosphere under conditions of intense freezing cold, like around minus 80 degrees Celsius.
Oh, that is freezing.
Right. And they are made of these tiny uniform ice crystals. Because of their high altitude, they catch the sunlight long after the sun has set at ground level.
Oh, I see.
The ice crystals diffract the light, producing these undulating, almost hallucinogenic bands of pinks, oranges, and reds.
Hallucinogenic, swirling bands of color. I mean, that perfectly describes the physical brushstrokes in the sky of the painting.
It's spot on. Furthermore, a 2017 meteorological study dug into historical weather records and confirmed that nacreous clouds did in fact occur over the Oslo area between 1890 and 1892.
Oh, way.
Yeah. The exact window when Munch was conceptualizing this experience.
So the sky actually looked like that in real time. It wasn't a hallucination at all.
Exactly. Which brings us to a massive revelation about the painting itself. I mean, we all call it the Scream.
Right.
But Munch's true original German title for the piece was Der Schrei der Natur, which translates to the Scream of Nature.
The scream of nature, meaning the nature itself, is the thing making the sound.
Yes. Look closely at the central figure in the painting. The universal assumption is that the figure is the one screaming.
I always thought it was the person screaming.
Right? Everyone does. But they aren't. Nature is screaming, the sky is roaring, the terrified figure on the bridge is throwing their hands over their ears, desperately trying to block out this overwhelming atmospheric assault.
Oh my gosh, that completely flips the script on how you view the canvas.
It really does.
It's like someone desperately trying to jam on noise-canceling headphones
Yeah.
in the middle of a chaotic, violently loud construction zone. They aren't the source of the noise. They are the victim of it.
They are completely under assault by their environment. And the sensory overload wasn't just above him in the stratosphere. It was literally surrounding him on the ground, too.
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. If he is standing on Ekeberg Hill, I was looking into the historical zoning of that specific area in Oslo.
Oh, yeah.
When you think of an overlook, you usually think of a scenic spot for tourists, right? But Eekberg Hill in 1892 sat directly above two very grim, very loud institutions.
Yeah, down in the valley below the hill, there was a major city slaughterhouse.
Right.
And situated right near it was a lunatic asylum.
But not just any asylum. The historical records show it was the exact facility where his sister Laura was locked up.
It's just devastating.
He could physically see the building containing her from the bridge where he was standing.
Think about his state of mind in that exact second. He is standing there looking at a sky that appears to be bleeding. Then he looks down and sees the physical brick-and-mortar building containing his sister's madness. The very madness he is terrified is coming to claim his own mind.
I think I see where the scream comes from. It's a literal synesthesia.
Right.
On a still evening, the mechanical sounds of dying animals from the slaughterhouse below would echo right up the valley walls to where he was standing.
Yeah, the acoustics would carry it all the way up.
He is hearing death, he is seeing madness, and the sky's on fire. It's like a tuning fork, you know.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You have this internal trauma vibrating at a highly specific, anxious frequency inside Munch's mind. And then he steps onto this hill and the environment hits the exact same frequency. The internal dread and the external reality resonate together until his psyche just shatters.
That resonance is captured perfectly in his original title. The nuance of the German word nature is crucial here.
How so?
Well, in that context, nature doesn't just mean pretty trees and fluffy clouds. It encompasses all living things. It is the brutal entirety of life and death. The slaughterhouse and the asylum all bound together in one deafening roar.
It completely reframes the painting from this abstract, vague expression of existential dread into an unbearable, hyperspecific collision of grief, guilt, and sheer sensory overload.
Happening at one exact geographical coordinate.
Exactly. It is the absolute peak of human vulnerability. He is trapped between the terrifying sky above and the sounds of death below.
Which introduces a massive technical challenge for Munch as an artist.
Right, how do you paint that?
Well, exactly. How do you physically translate a paralyzing multisensory sound wave onto a two-dimensional silent canvas?
You can't paint a sound.
Yeah.
You have to invent a way to make people feel it visually.
And he made several attempts at this over his career. There are actually 4 distinct versions of the scream created by Munch using different mediums, including pastels and paints.
Oh, I didn't realize there were 4.
Yeah. But the most famous one, the one that lives in everyone's head, is the 1893 version. And the medium he chose for that specific version is vital. It was done in oil tempera and pastel on cardboard.
Cardboard, not canvas.
Nope, cardboard.
Why paint a masterpiece on a piece of cardboard?
Well, traditional canvas is primed and stretched to make oil paint look luminous and rich. Cardboard is cheap, porous, and highly absorbent.
So it just soaks it all up.
Exactly. It sucks the oil right out of the paint, leaving the colors looking matte, dull, and chalky. It essentially strips the life out of the medium.
Wow.
For a painting about the draining of life and the onset of madness, that flat, lifeless texture was technically perfect.
That makes the figure itself make so much more sense. Because the figure in the 1893 version doesn't really look human.
It doesn't.
It is deliberately genderless, almost like a decaying corpse or a skull. The historical context suggests it might have been inspired by a Peruvian mummy that Munch saw at an exhibition in Paris a few years prior, like in 1889.
The physical resemblance to that mummy is undeniable, honestly. The hands clamped tightly to the sides of the face, the hollowed-out mouth, and empty eye sockets.
That's striking.
But the true brilliance of the technique is how the figure is dissolving. This is a core tenet of expressionism, prioritizing the internal emotional reality over a photorealistic depiction of the world.
Right.
If you look closely at the brushstrokes, there is no hard boundary between the person and the environment. The undulating curves of the body perfectly match the rippling curves of the landscape and the sky.
They just blend together.
The figure is literally being consumed by the sound waves of the world around them.
And meanwhile, his 2 friends are painted in the background, perfectly upright, structurally sound, just walking away.
Completely unaffected.
Yeah, they leave him utterly alone, dissolving into the atmosphere.
It highlights his total paralyzing isolation, but there is a hidden detail on that 1893 cardboard canvas that adds a really fascinating psychological layer.
Oh, I love hidden art details.
What is it? In the extreme upper left corner of the painting, there is a tiny, almost microscopic pencil inscription written in Danish.
What does the inscription say?
It translates to can only have been painted by a madman.
Wow.
For decades, historians assumed a vandal had scribbled it there while the painting was on display. But modern curators used infrared technology and handwriting analysis to confirm that Munch wrote it himself.
Wait, really? When an artist writes, can only have been painted by a madman on his own deeply personal masterpiece, what does that mean?
It's ambiguous, right?
Is he condemning himself? Like, is he looking at this monstrous thing he created and admitting that the insanity he always feared has finally arrived? Or is he being incredibly sarcastic and just beating his harsh contemporary critics to the punch?
I think it operates as a brilliant paradox. Munch was acutely aware of how society, and specifically the conservative alt critics of the 1890s, viewed his work and his family's highly publicized history of mental illness.
Right, they all knew his background.
They did. By writing that tiny sentence on the canvas, he takes ownership of the accusation. He externalizes his deepest fear, but with an ironclad, ironic detachment.
That's fascinating.
He's essentially saying, you think I'm crazy, fine. But only a madman has the clarity to show you how terrifying the world actually is.
He totally weaponizes his own vulnerability.
Oh.
But yeah, because he successfully captured such a raw, universal feeling of being exposed and defenseless, the physical painting paradoxically became a magnet for exploitation.
Oh, absolutely.
It became incredibly vulnerable to literal art thieves and later to pop culture.
The history of the painting's physical security is genuinely shocking. I mean, it has been the target of two high-profile dramatic thefts.
The first one was during the 1994 Winter Olympics in Norway, right?
Yes. The version housed in the National Gallery in Oslo was taken. And it wasn't an Ocean's 11-style high-tech heist at all.
No.
No, the thieves literally leaned a ladder against the building, smashed a window, cut the painting from the wall, and fled. It took less than a minute.
A ladder. You're kidding.
They even left a cheeky note behind that read, "Thanks for the poor security."
Stealing a national treasure with a ladder and a brick? Unbelievable. But the second theft was much darker and more violent from what I read.
It was. In 2004, a different version was stolen from the Munch Museum. This time, armed men wearing ski masks burst into the museum in broad daylight.
Terrifying.
They terrorized the families and visitors with guns, physically ripped the paintings off the walls, and sprinted out to a getaway car. It took 2 years for police to recover the works, and they suffered permanent physical damage in the process.
There is a really dark irony there. A painting fundamentally about the sudden, jarring experience of terror and vulnerability is subjected to a terrifying, violent daylight robbery.
Yeah, it's uncanny.
The physical object suffered the exact trauma depicted on its surface. But physical theft is one thing you know. The cultural theft of the image is another entirely.
Definitely. The scream is one of the most widely reproduced images in human history. In the 1980s, Andy Warhol created a series of brightly colored silk screens of the painting.
Cool.
Warhol's explicit stated intention was to desacralize the image. He wanted to strip away its deep existential weight and turn it into a flat, mass-produced pop art commodity.
Warhol essentially laid the groundwork for modern internet meme culture with that move.
Oh, 100%.
Think about how we communicate online today. Someone takes a photo of a person genuinely crying or experiencing deep distress, and they turn it into a reaction meme to joke about dropping their coffee.
Right, we trivialize it.
We constantly take authentic human pain and copy-paste it into absurdity to make it digestible.
We use repetition to dilute the potency of the emotion.
Exactly. But here's the thing about the scream. Warhol tried to desacralize it. The internet tried to turn it into a joke. But when you strip away the memes, the coffee mugs, and the cheap Halloween masks, and you just sit and look at the raw, chalky anguish in those original brushstrokes,
Yeah.
the human truth of the piece still punches you in the gut.
Because that truth is neurologically unavoidable. Despite a century of mass production, the original image retains its power because the feeling it describes is a universal biological experience.
We've all been there on some level.
Right. Every single person has had a moment, maybe not on a hill overlooking an asylum, but a moment where the sensory input of the world becomes entirely too much. The noise is deafening and you just want to press your hands to your ears and make it stop.
Yeah.
Munch managed to take an invisible internal nervous system response and render it entirely visible.
He basically painted the mechanics of a panic attack.
Which brings us to the final chapter of Munch's life, and it is honestly the greatest twist of all. It really is an amazing end to the story.
We started this deep dive with a terrified young man who firmly believed that death and madness had an early, inescapable claim on him. He felt utterly doomed.
But the story doesn't end with him succumbing to the madness he feared. He didn't follow the tragic trajectory of his sister or his mother.
Thankfully.
In 1908, after years of struggling with severe alcoholism, hallucinations, and worsening mental health, Munch took radical control of his life. He voluntarily checked himself into a psychiatric clinic in Copenhagen.
Wow. Good for him.
And he stayed there for 8 months, receiving intensive treatment and therapy.
He actually put in the work to heal. He got better. He stopped drinking. He bought a beautiful sprawling estate called Eekely outside of Oslo, and he spent the next 27 years just painting.
Relentlessly, every single day.
And the irony is profound. The man who painted the ultimate enduring icon of anxiety and impending doom outlived almost everyone from his generation.
He really did. He lived to be 80 years old. He survived the horrific 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. He outlived the vast majority of the Second World War, and he died peacefully in his sleep in 1944.
That's incredible.
And when he died, he left behind an astonishing collection of over 20,000 individual works of art, which he bequeathed to the city of Oslo.
20,000 works. That is a lifetime of relentless, disciplined creation. But he never forgot where that creative drive originated, right? He knew exactly what fueled his engine.
Oh, definitely.
There's a quote from his later years where he reflects on his life, and he says, quote, "Without anxiety and illness, I am a ship without a rudder." He truly believed that his psychological wound was his primary instrument.
He recognized that his suffering and his art were inextricably linked. They were the same entity.
So to bring this all home for you listening, the next time you see the scream printed on a cheap phone case or a novelty mug, I want you to look past the pop culture chorus.
Don't just see a meme or a caricature.
Exactly. See a lonely man standing on a hill, the icy stratosphere turning to fire above him, the industrial sounds of death echoing below him, terrified of the madness in his own blood, just desperately trying to hold on to his sanity in a world that is way too loud.
It changes everything about the image. And it leaves us with a lingering question, something to really chew on long after we finish today.
Okay.
Well, consider Munch's own deeply held belief that his suffering was indistinguishable from his art. If modern medicine and targeted therapy had been available to completely cure Munch of his anxiety, grief, and trauma when he was in his 20s, would the world have been robbed of his genius?
Oh, wow.
And if so, is our deep appreciation of this incredible universal art fundamentally reliant on the exploitation of one man's lifelong pain?